So again, the update on June 28th. There's something I wanted to add, and that is about, how it is that this situation kind of came about. This probably goes in the section of, their tactics, the gang stalking tactics, but I feel like I need to say something here, because the gang stalkers make up all kinds of stories about the victims as to why, we've fallen on hard times, as if it's an accident. Nothing of this is an accident at all. It's all meticulously planned, organized, planned, and carried out in military fashion, okay, against the victim. And this is why Bill Binney was saying, if you're a target, there's nothing you can do. They're going to get you one way or another. And it's because they're as I say, they're this all-powerful, network of evil working with, law enforcement, dirty cops. How can you fight against that? That in itself needs to be investigated, because there's something very wrong there. And, this is part of what JFK was talking about. It's a plot to enslave every man, woman, and child, and not just in America, but all over the world. Because you see, it's not just the victim. It's the people around the victim that are then thinking, oh my God, I better shut my mouth. I better not tell the truth, or that will happen to me. Do you understand? That's an enslavement as well. Okay. So what I want to say is that they deliberately block all the target's avenues of basically survival, and that's what they did to me. For example, and the other thing that they do is that they just make sure that anything that their victim does or says is interpreted in some kind of sinister way, okay? And I'll give you an example of that. I was a single mum, okay? And then I got a job at British Airways, and I actually got into debt. It was very difficult, okay? It was very difficult. I had to drive a long way to the training. It was very difficult at first, okay? And then finally, after a few years, I was beginning to think, okay, now I'm not completely, destitute and on the edge of, not being allowed to have a bank account, that kind of thing. I wanted to, I recognized that I wasn't earning enough money for my retirement, because it's a long story, but I'd been a single mum for so many years that I hadn't accrued enough. I don't know how they do it in America, but in England, you have to have worked for 30 years without a break. And I hadn't, because I had been a single mum. And also, even before I was a single mum, I'd been traveling. I'd been living in Argentina, which is where I was born, and I'd been working there. So obviously I hadn't been paying my taxes. That's the whole point. You have to have been paying your taxes for 30 years. I believe that's what it is. So there was a point at which I was thinking, okay, how am I going to do this? Because I love my job and I don't want to lose my job. I don't want to get a different job, but I'm going to have to supplement this somehow. So I was looking into different ways. I was looking into like side hustles, and I was, just reading books about stuff like that to try and think my way out of this. How can I fix this? And at that time, I was living in social housing. In England, it's called a council house. So I was paying very little rent, but I didn't have my own home. Anyway, I read that book, the Rich Dad, Poor Dad book, and I started to think along those lines. Okay, if I do this and if I borrow this amount of money, then maybe I could put a down payment on a home, blah, 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 blah. I was trying to think my way around like that. And those are some of the steps that I was doing but this wasn't devious, this wasn't, the gang stalkers made this appear as if I don't know. I don't even know exactly what they were saying, but certainly they were making me out to be like this. I don't know. It's like a criminal, really. And really all I was trying to do was to have enough money for my retirement. So what I did was, I was getting to the point where I had enough for a down payment so that I could get a mortgage. But then because I'd read this book, I thought, well, maybe if instead of one property, I got two smaller properties, but I used one of them to rent, then that would be an income. And anyway, those were the lines along those lines I was thinking. So I got a little apartment in the south of England, in like one of the cheapest areas that you can, and it was the tiniest little apartment. And I also got one in Italy, in a very, very cheap area of Italy as well. And I was using the income from that, I was renting out as a holiday place and using that. At one point, it's a bit complicated because at one point I was like living there, but then because of the gang stalking and stuff, I changed the plan and I ended up renting it as a holiday home so that I could have an income. And then the gang stalkers flooded that place. Firstly, they broke in and they were using it. They just broke in and they were using the electricity and stuff. And then the next thing they did was they flooded it. So this is the kind of thing that they do, all right? And in the end, and then the gang stalkers got to the woman who was looking after the place. So that's all now too much for me. I can't even deal with it. It's too much. Okay, I'm being tortured. I can't deal with that as well. And anyone who takes part in this torture is a dead person to me. I just want to clarify this. They are a dead person to me. They do not exist as a human being anymore to me, anyone who does that. And they definitely need to be prosecuted. Okay, so this to me is very serious. I wrote a letter signing it all, saying to my children, this is your inheritance, because I wanted them to have something. See, that was another part of it. I was very worried that my children weren't going to have any inheritance because I didn't have anything, So everything I was doing wasn't sinister at all. I was just trying to have enough for my retirement and something to leave my children, you know. And these gang stalkers made it seem as though it was something nefarious, and I don't know what they did or how they did it, but the point I'm making is this. Everything was legal, and my plan was to that the income from the rents was, you know, and plus me working, I had to continue working, and I was doing overtime work, not different kind of work. Like on my days off, I was working in a nursery, looking after children, because I have qualifications in childcare as well. But that also the gang stalkers got to those people as well, so that income dried up because of that as well. So they literally sabotage every way, okay? And then what they do is, like here in America, every time I tried to get, you know, like the visa and, you know, to get justice, they just block every avenue. And they were also labor trafficking me here. They sabotaged every single one of my vehicles, and then they would have people pretending that they wanted to help, but they were labor trafficking me, actually. That happened in Riviera, Texas, okay? And all of these things need to be investigated, and they're all just being covered up. And I believe that it's being covered up and people just go along with it because they've been told such horrible stories about me that they think that somehow I deserve it. But firstly, they're not true. And secondly, who on earth deserves to be tortured for the rest of their life? Nobody. And who's got the right to do that? Nobody. This is totally insane. If I have done something wrong, then take me to a court of law. Okay? Do a real investigation and prove it, and then take me to a court of law. And then have the judge give the sentence. That's how it works. And you know, people are actually innocent until proven guilty, not the other way around. See, all of this needs to be investigated. So what I want to explain is that, you know, I know that gang stalkers tell people, oh, she's lazy, she doesn't want to work. No, they just put me in setup after setup after setup that were all situations where I was being imprisoned, actually. And not just in the way I am now, but in different ways, like kind of indentured servant kind of thing. I don't know how to say it, but all the situations they put me in were a kind of slavery, which is what human trafficking is, isn't it? Oh, and they've got so many stories about why they're doing it. You know, they say it's just a joke, or they say it's some kind of therapy, or they say, oh, they're helping me to learn to be assertive and defend my and stand up against bullies or something. This isn't bullying. This is torture. These are crimes against humanity, and I'm completely on my own against just this unbelievable amount of people who all seem to hate me irrationally, and I don't know why. And it's all to do with what these people have said about me, and I don't even know what that is. So here's the thing, and I can't even, I can't even defend myself because I don't know what's being said. You know, I'm like, stabbing in the dark. I don't know what they're saying. But certainly I'm not lazy. I've never been lazy in my life. But they have been mind controlling me to be, as I said, to have these ME symptoms and to be depressed and and all kinds of things like that. Oh, and they were definitely mind controlling me to just always say exactly the wrong thing. And I've spoken about that. But what they've done now essentially is they've just dwindled. They've imprisoned me here. They stopped me being able to do any kind of business or investments or, excuse me. Yeah, they basically stopped me from doing any kind of business or investments or working or any kind of work, any kind of anything. And now they've imprisoned me in my home until my inheritance from my dad was completely dwindled. And on the subject of how they get away with it, this is another way they get away with it. I'm not the only one they've done this to. This is what they do to pretty much all TIs, okay? And they leave us in a situation where we have no choice. Except this is so serious to me, so serious that, I mean, look, my only reason for living now is to get justice. So if there's not going to be justice, I will sit here and die. That's what's going to happen. I will not take a bribe. I will not be coerced. I will not be bullied. I will not be threatened to accept torture. I will not. There needs to be justice here because that's what's right. And because this must never happen to anyone again. These are human rights violations, and that is not acceptable in the most powerful country in the world. That's not acceptable. I'm being tortured and my human rights are being violated in America in 2025. That's not acceptable. And it's not a world that any of you should want your grandchildren and descendants growing up in. It's just not acceptable. And this is what JFK was talking about. And yes, obviously it includes the mind control and all of that. But there seems to be an element of people that are trying to claim that this is all about AI. And yeah, AI is part of it. Yep, they do use AI. But AI has to be programmed. And who programs it? People do. So we're back to criminals again. This isn't about some obscure, technology. No, it isn't. There's people holding that technology. There's people programming that technology. Those people can be prosecuted, okay? Those people can be prosecuted and need to be prosecuted. And there needs to be an investigation. And I need help right now because I've run out of options here, okay? And I am telling the truth. And find out for yourself. If there's an investigation, a real investigation, you will see for yourself. And that's what needs to happen. I need help here. I need an investigation, please.